Pakistan, we can tell you, is part of the club of 28 countries that do not recognize Israel. Even its passports are not valid for travel to Israel. Pakistan and Israel have been on opposite sides in most wars. But that doesn't mean they do not engage. Quite the contrary, in fact. Pakistan and Israel have a long history of engagement. Our next report tells you the story.
There's only one passport in the world that bears this stamp: Pakistan. Pakistani citizens can't travel to Israel because their passports will be invalid there. Pakistan and Israel do not have a diplomatic relationship. They do not have diplomatic missions. But that doesn't mean both sides don't have any ties. Pakistan and Israel have had a long and tricky relationship. It began in the year 1947. Soon after the partition, Mohammed Ali Jinnah received a telegram. It was from David Ben-Gurion, the man who became the first Prime Minister of Israel. The telegram was an overture. Israel wanted to establish diplomatic ties with Pakistan, but the wish wasn't granted. In 1952, Pakistan's then Foreign Minister, Mohammad Zafarullah Khan, took a hard line against Israel and supported Palestine. The hostilities only grew from there. Pakistan tried to supply military assistance to Palestine and the Arabs against Israel. The Pakistani Air Force sent its pilots and jets to fight against Israel in 2 wars: the Six-Day War in 1967 and the Yom Kippur War in 1973. After that battle, Pakistan and the PLO signed an agreement. PLO officers were offered training at Pakistani military institutions. Despite their hostilities, Pakistan and Israel have cooperated on the intelligence front. In the early 1980s, Pakistani President Zia-ul-Haq told the ISI to establish contact with the Mossad, a move that would trigger a conflict in Afghanistan. Pakistan and Israel became partners in Operation Cyclone, the American program to arm and finance anti-Soviet militants in Afghanistan. The ISI from Pakistan, the MI6 of the United Kingdom, the Mossad from Israel, and the CIA of America ran Operation Cyclone for a decade. Israel supplied Soviet-made weaponry to the militants in Afghanistan. Pakistan played the role of the intermediary. The ISI gave weapons, funds, and financial support to the militants. Despite the close cooperation for Afghanistan, the bilateral relationship has remained riddled with hostilities. The death of Daniel Pearl added to the mistrust. The American-Israeli journalist was killed by Pakistani terrorists, allegedly with the backing of the ISI. According to a report from the Time magazine, the terrorists believed that Pearl was an Israeli Mossad agent who was operating in Pakistan. In 2003, celebrated French intellectual Bernard Henry Lévy had suggested that Pearl was close to uncovering the ties between ISI chiefs and the Al-Qaeda. Almost a week back, a Pakistani court had ordered the release of Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh, a man accused of murdering Daniel Pearl. The Israel-Pakistan relationship is a complicated one, and that's what makes the prospects of normalizing ties so controversial in Islamabad. While Imran Khan has constantly denied reports of overtures to Israel to avoid any backlash, this is one decision that's well beyond his pay grade. Bureau Report, World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.